What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 331 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, we're joined by Micah Miller. He is the managing member of Easton Outdoors, and we get into a lot of different topics, including why he calls himself a managing member. But really, I reached out to him because he has a very unique and captivating display picture on his Instagram page, which has always stuck out to me. And then when I went onto his website, it was very clear that they have a whole content strategy around writing articles, blog posts, whatever you want to call them, for his business website, along with numerous guides on his website. So it was something that I wanted to reach out to him to talk about his strategy behind this for his business. But we got into a lot more topics than just this, including his whole business journey and why he actually decided to go down this route of content creation for his business and what that's actually led to in his business. But before we get into this, we want to say thank you to our sponsors. Cycle CPA. If you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. Patio SEO has hopped on board as a sponsor, and they are a leading marketing and brand building company in the hardscape industry. And if you don't know, this company is run by James Reed. We've had him on the podcast a couple of times, some of our more popular episodes, and he owns hardscape businesses across the country. And now you can have access to the same in-house marketing team that he has access to at patioseo.com. So if you're looking for a killer website, targeted ads, or data-driven strategies to grow, check them out at patioseo.com. If you're planning to go to Hardscape North America in Louisville, Kentucky, October 22nd to the 24th, you can use promo code VIPHTH to sign up, get 50% off your registration. That also gives us a little bit of a kickback and helps us here at the How to Hardscape podcast. And Knowledge Tree Consulting. George and Peter there are efficiency consultants in our industry, and I've had the privilege of having them both on one episode of the How to Hardscape podcast, and George multiple other times. Always great episodes, and I also got to sit down on a one-on-one with George and went through what they do for businesses, and I left that meeting with a lot of value, so I can't recommend them enough. If you want to learn more about what they do, go to knowledgetreeconsulting.com and get that conversation started with them today. And without further ado, here is today's episode with Micah Miller. Today we're joined by Micah Miller. He is a managing member of Easton Outdoors. I see him on Instagram, his display picture there, his profile picture, which really stands out. And then just doing a deep dive into Easton Outdoors website really got me intrigued. Thank you so much for taking your time.
Yes, thanks for having me here. I'm excited to dive into some stuff here.
So first and foremost, and we talked about it just before we hit record here, managing member. Why do you call yourself a managing member of Easton Outdoors?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I didn't tip my hand to you before we got on here. So I always just had this thing about all these people that call themselves the president of like a company, and I'm like, the president of what? Like, explain to me what you're the president of. And, okay, you're president of a business doing, $300,000 a year. And so, owner is okay, but managing member, I consider everybody in our company just one part of the team. We're all rowing in the same direction. We're all going, and owner, president, CEO, none of those were really fitting titles for what we're doing here at Easton Outdoors. And so managing member, I'm the member that just manages the company. I'm the 100% shareholder, and it just made sounds better, it fits better, and it's not pretentious. I'm not the president of, this company. And so I just like the sound of it a lot better. I think it's a better approach to talking about the organization that we run.
Is that something that's going to help you in the future when if you do plan to like grow the business, where your roles and responsibilities become less and less client facing, where somebody else can step in? Like, I see that as somebody else can step in a sales role, be more client facing, and them wanting a president. Well, we don't have a president, we have a managing member. Is something that you thought of as well there?
Yeah, to some extent. So I still am mostly the client facing. I do almost all of the client facing interactions. I'm still the main salesman. But as we are growing, like we will actually have a president, and it's not going to be me, which is going to be the funny part. Is probably the first person to hold that title will end up being my office manager, who has we had a fractional CFO, and she's actually taken over all the responsibilities of the fractional CFO, and it's actually developing kind of like those CFO tendencies and kind of running a lot of the behind the scenes in the organization. So before you know it, there will be a president, but it won't be me,
That's
which is
really
so great.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you in that situation, you'd just continue being a managing member, and that would be your role there.
yeah, that would be it.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
That's really
lead
cool.
sales and managing member. Yeah,
So let's take a step back here and let's get to know a little bit more about you yourself, how you got started in the industry, what brought you to Easton Outdoors. Start wherever you want, end wherever you want, but I'm sure I'll have a lot of follow-up questions for you.
yeah, absolutely. So I don't know that my story is probably hyper unique. I mean, there's tons of people that I meet all over the country and in my travels that are young kids starting out in this industry, starting out to cut grass, and that's right where I started. I started out. Hurricane Isabel had just come through, and I live on the East Coast in Virginia. I was 12 years old. Hurricane Isabel came through, and it did a massive amount of destruction, knocked down a bunch of trees, and was just a huge disaster in our town. And so I started with just going about with a rake and a blower and just cleaning up people's yards. It was a good opportunity for a 12-year-old to go make a little bit of extra change. And that led quickly into cutting grass. And I just had a bunch of kids and friends from church that would come and help me cut grass. And what kind of just started as I need a little bit of pocket change, just developed over time. Fast forward a few years, and one of the guys that was working with me, his sister was dropping him off to work. And I kind of, liked his sister. And next thing you know, we're dating. And next thing you know, we actually get married. And so as a result of that kind of relationship and the business, it kind of forced me to have to grow the business enough to support my new bride. And so at 18 years old, right when I got married, we grew the business just enough to kind of support, and it was just a chuck and a truck kind of mentality. I mean, it was just me, and I'd have different guys through the years, usually just one helper. Maybe I'd grab an extra helper when I need to, just doing like 150 or so a year in revenue, just cutting grass, just happy to be, out on my own, just happy to have, some lawnmowers and kind of making it. And, like I said, that lasted for about 5 years. Along the way, I met a guy and he started kind of giving me some advice on how to run a business and how to bid work. And I mean, I remember very distinctly, I was standing on top of this knoll in Williamsburg and I was looking at this apartment complex that I was trying to figure out how to bid and how to put a grass cutting contract together. And he sent me a sample contract. He said, walk around the property, break it into sections, kind of figure out how long it'll take you. And he just kind of like made it very granular. I put everything together. I put a bid in and they accepted it. I was not the cheapest one either, which kind of told me that I was in about the right spot. But they liked what my approach was for maintaining the property, and that kind of started. That was like the kickoff of the growth. And so from there, at that point, we were about maybe 165 a year when I got that bid, and quickly we grew to be about a $1.8 million business. But still a jack of all trades. I kind of jokingly say I was the landscape handyman. We hadn't specialized in anything. I had about 18 guys running around and was not profitable at all. Wasn't making any money. At 1.8 million, I think my take home pay was like $40,000. I mean, it was rough. I was in a pretty bad spot, but it was always in the name of growth and in the name of building a business, always in the name of developing an organization. This is the expense and cost that you have to go through. Along that way, And so the mentor, he did a really good job of helping me grow the business, but he didn't really do a great job of helping me understand kind of like the granular nuts and bolts of the numbers and how to manage overhead and keep things in check and really just understanding like what it looks like from behind the scenes. Very good on the face, not so great behind the scenes. And so I started following a good friend of mine, Casey Fabling. He's like, hey, check out these people, the contractor fight. They're really helping me develop my business. And I said, okay, I'll check it out. So I joined their free program, and honestly, it started to make sense to me. Things started to, it was like, here's what a sales process is. I was like, oh, a sales process? Oh, okay. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a sales process, right? I'm kind of, I didn't really know. Oh, here's how you got a client through a sales process. And so I then hired them and got jumped into one of their paid programs. And that was kind of like the start of the end in some sense, because they were like, you need to niche down, you need to know what your numbers are, you need to know what your daily break even is, you need to understand what it costs you for a man hour. And so I started calculating all these things. No one had ever taught me this kind of stuff. I didn't go to school, right? Nobody's ever explained to me how to look at any of these numbers, much less a P&L or a balance sheet, right? I have no clue what I'm doing. And um, fast forward a little ways, and I start to find out that my break even is $46 a man hour, 46.20 if I remember correctly, and I was charging $45 a man hour. So right there, I'm $1.20, below the rate that I should be, and so I started cutting services. So I said, okay, we're not going to do this service anymore. We're not going to do this service anymore. We're going to stop becoming the landscape handyman, if you will, and start kind of niching down. Well, what I didn't know, and now I'm keenly aware of this, is when you start cutting services, but you have tools, equipment, and personnel to handle those services, you need to also cut your overhead at a commensurate rate. And I was not doing that, and so that actually created a bit more of a spiral, because at least even though I wasn't making any money, we were paying all of our bills and we were at least staying afloat. And so when I started cutting services and kind of chopping the business up a little bit, it spiraled pretty quickly. And I got to a point where it was almost bankruptcy. Um, Pretty much over like 12 to 18 months, just really drove deep into the ground. And what you see now is a very I spent a lot of time soul searching and trying to understand exactly what should Easton Outdoors be? What should this business be? And what you see now is kind of a result of that is like, okay, we're going to be a water feature company. And we're only going to do water features. We're going to do just enough landscaping to get by. But if somebody calls our company and asks for something, we're going to say, no, we don't, but here's a partner in the industry, and we're only going to do water features. Well, that concept probably only lasted about 18 months, because what I found is pretty much everybody who wants a water feature also wants a patio. So we started installing patios, and I actually was subbing them all out. So we started installing all these patios, and then I started to find out, okay, there's other people who want patios, not just people who want water features. But what I found is when I choked the whole thing down and I brought it down just to water features, it allowed us to get really good at water features. And then we were able to start adding little add-on services, but do it the right way in an orderly fashion. So almost went bankrupt, reset the business, went down to water features, niched all the way down. Then we started adding in hardscape. And to this day, we don't go to somebody's property unless they're having us do a patio or a water feature. Those are the two ways to get us onto your property. Maybe some lighting or something like that, but those are the two ways to get us onto your property. And then while we're there, yeah, we'll do some landscape. Yeah, we'll do some drainage. Yeah, we'll do a couple other things, but we won't go to somebody's property unless they're having us come out for one of those two things. That's kind of our way of just, those are our profit centers. Those are what we're really good at. That's our way of just saying no. So reset from there. The guy I was subbing to with the pavers, he ended up wanting to get out and retire. And so a business that he had started doing hardscapes back in 98, I folded that into my organization and effectively doubled the size of our organization, and brought on the same family that had been working for this guy since 98. Very talented Guatemalan crews that are pretty much like my family now. And so now we have those three crews, all still family and cousins, running the hardscape. And I've got my brother over building water features. I have a water feature maintenance team run by Frank. He does that. And then we recently started doing hardscape maintenance. I brought my cousin on. He'd been doing a lot of pressure washing and stuff like that. So he's doing the hardscape maintenance. And then we have a subbed out landscape crew that does a lot of cleanup around our patios, so that my brother can stay focused on the water features. So there you go. There's kind of like the up and down, and then revenue wise, we'll do close to 6 million this year, with a pretty, I mean, it's starting to get pretty well trimmed out in a fairly organized fashion.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. I've got lots of notes here to ask you. First and foremost, with water features, did you immediately start taking on, say, water feature maintenance, or was this something that you realized after installing water features that you needed some sort of maintenance team on top of that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I have a lot of people ask me, like, hey, we want to get into water features. How should we start? And this advice was given to me, and I give this advice to a lot of people, is that you start with the maintenance. Because it's really easy to go start maintaining, and I mean, you kind of have to bluff your way through some of it, as any good entrepreneur will do, is they'll just kind of stick their foot in something and then, figure it out as they go along. And so for water features, there's a lot to know about them. And I found that one of the best things that you can do is you can actually start maintaining water features, and you'll find all of the terrible ways to do it, because you're in somebody's backyard and you're looking at this water feature and it is a complete pile of you know what, and you're just trying to figure out how to put it back together and make it so that this client can have a good experience with water. And so we started actually with the maintenance, is the advice that I was giving. Don't start trying to build. That's a little bit more of an ego play. Start with trying to maintain them. And so I was doing all the maintenance, and then I brought on Frank in 2018, and he started working on the maintenance alongside me. And then eventually, I just handed him the entire maintenance division, and then he's still running it to this day. And that has been one of the keys to our success, because even as we build stuff, if there's a little, like a low edge on a water feature or something like that, Frank can jump out there, go take care of it, and we don't have to send the whole install crew out there to take care of it. So always start with the maintenance, so that you can learn a lot about how to take care of these things and how to take care of clients once you've built them. And there's a lot of stuff that needs to be learned.
Do you sell the maintenance package as part of the new install? So when you sell a new water feature, do you say, we can also maintain this for you? This is the price for that as well, and get them signed up immediately, or does this come after the fact?
Unfortunately, when you build a really good water feature, it doesn't need a lot of maintenance. So, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant when I say that, but a lot of the water features we build, they don't need a lot of maintenance. They need just like a once a year kind of check-in. And so we build in a couple free visits from Frank, so that he can kind of go, it's built into the cost. His business is run on a completely separate P&L. It's completely independent of our construction side of the business, because it's just a totally different mentality. And so we build into our numbers on the construction side a visit from Frank on the maintenance side, just so he can get a little bit of FaceTime with them, and they get to know who he is and kind of build a little bit of rapport. And so we do find most of those people will come back for different services. As some of the first features we built, back in 2018 are starting to age, we have found that, like, okay, a tree root grew over this edge and it's, causing some issues or whatever. And Frank gets dialed in, and then they like the first 3 years, though, most of these water features don't need anything. And so they have a relationship with Frank, and they start to get to know him, and they do end up calling us back, but it does take a little bit of time before we have to show up.
You did mention that when you decided to cut services way back,
Yep.
what services did you cut? And was it sort of methodical in the way you were cutting them, in terms of like the numbers, what the numbers were showing you? Or was this more like, I don't want to do this anymore because I don't like doing it?
So I was learning a new sales process. So before, it was, we're going to trim bushes and we're going to charge you by the hour, or we're going to come out and we're going to do a landscape install. And so I started cutting, drainage and some of these ancillary landscape services for people who weren't a grass cutting client already, because we didn't have a good baseline to give a price. And so my thought process was, if you're not already a client, then I don't want to really be working for you. I want to focus on the grass cutting clients we have right now, and only take care of the services they have, because we know we kind of have proven. What it ended up being at the end of the day is I decided to actually sell all of the grass cutting. So I had about $750,000 in commercial contracts. And so those ended up getting sold to a landscape company. And they took over, and we made a deal where I did some of the services for like the first 3 months, and then they took over the rest. And there was kind of like a handoff in that. And then all the residential, they were all in routes. And we'd kept our routes pretty tight. I ended up handing over all the routes to a few different landscape guys locally who were looking to grow their maintenance division. And then we had about 400 turf treatment accounts and went to a company locally, Virginia Green, and handed all those accounts over to them and got a little bit of a payout for that. So that was, I started kind of cutting some stuff. And then at the end of the day, I said, you know what? I'm just going to take our enhancement division, which was made up of three guys. And one of those guys decided he didn't want to stay because I went to my team and I said, here's what I'm planning on doing. What would you like to do? And so as kind of things tapered down, some of the landscape guys that were cutting grass, they went with the new companies that took over the routes and were familiar with them. And it was just down to me and two other guys. And we just restarted from scratch, quite honestly. And we just were like enhancements only. That's the only thing we're going to do, which is kind of a nerve-wracking thing. But throughout 2018, this is the birth of the website that you see today. I started like myself actually like redesigning, writing every day, putting blogs up, just completely reimagining what marketing needed to look like. And so that started in 2018, and it's taken years and years to get off the ground. But I was like, people who, and we weren't paying for advertising. It was literally just, let me write blogs. Let me get some SEO going. Let me get some stuff on our website that people can understand what we're capable of. And that whole restructure starting in 2018 really took on some lifeblood of its own, and really was what ended up being able to push us into the enhancement only and water feature only, and being able to actually stay afloat with that.
We want to take a break from today's episode to talk about marketing. Are you looking to take your hardscape business to the next level? Well, this is brought to you by Patio SEO, the leading marketing and brand building company in the hardscape industry. And if you don't know, this company is run by James Reed, who owns multiple hardscape businesses across the country. And here's the kicker. You're not just getting access to any team. You're getting access to the very team that helped grow James's own companies, plus hundreds of others in the industry. Whether you need a killer website, targeted ads, or data-driven strategies to grow, Patio SEO has got you covered. They've been in your shoes and know exactly what works. We've had James Reed on the podcast a couple of times, and they're some of our more popular episodes, talking about branding, talking about how he's built companies across the country. And with that, he needs lots of leads, which means he's had to perfect his branding and marketing. And now you can have access to that same in-house team that he has access to for his own hardscape company. So if you're ready to build your brand and see some serious growth, check them out at patioseo.com. That's patioseo.com, or follow James on Instagram at road to 100ms. That's road to 100ms. Let's get your business the attention it deserves. Now back to the episode. We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Cycle CPA. It's crucial to review your financial statements on a monthly basis so you can diagnose areas for improving your business's financial health early before they become significant issues. Too many contractors wait until the end of the year to review their financials as they file taxes, when it's often too late to take action to change the outcome. Cycle CPA not only handles bookkeeping and taxes, but they also ensure that you're armed with financial data on a monthly basis to make key business decisions. They offer benchmarking, cash flow forecasting, and assistance in developing targets for financial metrics. With their team of accountants specialized in the hardscape and landscape industry, they currently work with hundreds of companies in this field. Visit cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. This might be a good time to start talking about that website. I went through it. I counted around 200 blog posts. So going back to that, it's and a whole bunch of different pages on hardscape guides and water feature guides and so on and so forth. It's quite an investment of your time to do something like that. Did you know that this would kind of pay off in the future, and it was just a matter of I need to take time to do this? Because most business owners won't take the time to do something like that, or even pay money for to outsource that for that to happen. What was the thought process on willing to be able to take that time out of your day to do something like this?
Yeah. So there's two sides to this. The first side is when you're backed in the corner, you'll pretty much do anything to get out of the corner, right? I mean, and that's exactly where I was. I don't want to make light of where I was in 2018 and 19. When I say I was borderline bankruptcy, I mean, we're talking what I thought was $422,000 in debt was way more. I mean, it was over $500,000 of debt. And I had warning debts being taped to my door of people I couldn't pay. I mean, it was like $14,000 in overdraft and bank fees that I accrued over the course of that period of time. So I just want to say, like, when there's no way out, like you do what you need to do to like, and so I had this path had been painted as a path that would bring the freedom. There's a book that Marcus Sheridan wrote called "They Ask You Answer." And the whole concept behind this is show clients the way, answer the questions that they have, design and write blogs that answer everything that could convince somebody to buy from you without you ever actually picking up a phone or saying a single word to them. And so this was the whole idea is how do you make a website where people can go on, they can see everything they need to see, they can have a good understanding of what they're looking at and what they need to buy, without ever once having to pick up the phone and talk to you. And so this is kind of what the birth of the project recap is what I call it. And it started with 4 in 2018. I took 4 jobs that were jobs that I wanted to sell on repeat. And the idea was, let me show you how long it took. Let me show you what materials went into it. Let me show you the total price point, which everybody says you can't put price on your website. I put the price out there. I then had Facebook Live videos that I recorded and I went through and explained the entire thing. This is the extent of the technology. I'm not doing some fancy YouTube videos. It was just these Facebook Lives I recorded, one before, one during, and one after. And then I wrote essentially a project recap that just said, here was the purpose of the job. Here's what the client was looking for. And here's what we put together. And here's the end result. And I just showed before and during after photos as well. And it worked. And so 4 now has turned into 27 of those on our website. And I mean, you found 200 blog posts, but our website is 600 and some pages. It's 20 gigabytes. I mean, it's a massive site that we're constantly retooling and readjusting, and like there's a bunch of stuff we're actually in progress right now on the back end of taking down and re-uploading and changing, and there's a ton of stuff going on the website right now that it's gonna look and feel the same, but we're adjusting. And so that's like backed into a corner, plus reading this book that made it pretty clear, like if you can be the source and be the expert for a client, they're going to trust you before they trust anybody else. They're going to trust that you can do the job the right way. And then by the time they talk to other people or have other people come out and talk to them, they're going to be like, ah, man, it doesn't seem like this guy knows what he's talking about. Even if they're way more of an expert than I am, and a lot of people are more of an expert than I am, I just had to convince them that I am the expert through my website by just talking about stuff in the way that makes sense to me, and just explaining things in the way that makes sense to me. And people bought into that. And I mean, that's the recipe for success, is just being daring enough to put that kind of information out there on the web.
You and I have a very similar methodology, and I that's why I love to talk about this stuff. And hopefully, our audience can take some nuggets of this and put it into practice for them. How long did it start after writing and creating pages, creating blog posts, and so on your website to start to see the fruits of that investment of time, bring in clients, or were you immediately starting to use those with clients that you were visiting, say, or like they call up, hey, go to our website and start to use it in that way? And both, like, when did you start to see those fruits come to bear?
Yeah, so before I had put those up, validation cycle is something that I think is a legitimate thing that a lot of us don't ever we don't we start in a weird place and then we don't do something long enough to actually get a validation cycle. And so what I mean by validation cycle is you do something, it's a reasonable amount of work. You kind of have to like start on this journey, you do the work, it's live, it's active, and then you somebody says, "Hey, I saw what you did." So you got validated for that entire cycle. And then you do, and then you're like, "Wow, so it worked. So I'm going to start that whole journey again. I'm going to do the hard work. I'm going to make it live. I'm going to put everything out there." And then somebody says, "Hey, I saw it." So validation cycle. So the more of those validation cycles we can go through, the more effort and energy we're going to put into it because we're seeing that it actually is worth our time. And so I had started with these Facebook Lives. I was told by the contractor fight, do Facebook Lives. And I was like, okay, I'll do Facebook Lives. And so in April 2018, I didn't know a single thing what I was doing. I just started doing them. Then they're like, do YouTube videos, take your Facebook Lives and stitch them together and make it okay. I mean, if this is what I need to do. All right. I'm desperate to make it like to change something. And so what I was seeing already is that just by willing to take a chance and be on camera, my validation cycle was starting already. And so then I was like, well, let me put these, like, I'm tired of getting asked the same question. Is honestly where it stemmed from. Like, I talking to somebody on the phone and they have no clue what they're asking for, or I'm explaining the same thing. Like, one of my favorite blogs is how to grow grass. People all the time asking me how to grow grass. And like, it would be friends and family members and everybody. I'm like, I'm going to write a blog. I'm tired of repeating the same thing over and over again. I'm just going to write a blog about how to grow grass or how to water plants. And I'm tired of explaining it to every single client. So I'm just going to record a video and write a blog that talks about how to water plants. And anything that I get asked more than like 3 or 4 times, I just write a blog, put it on there. And then what I do is I put these keyword shortcuts. So you have text replacement in an iPhone or an Android. And so you can literally type like a jumblation of words, but it maybe means something to you, and it'll spit out a URL. It'll spit out whatever you want. So I have all these text replacements in my phone. And so somebody's talking about like, how do I grow a lawn? And I'll be like, what's your phone number? And I just type, if I type best lawn as one word, it spits out an entire URL, which is the blog to that site there on my website. And so I just started doing that, and because I was tired of answering these same questions. And so when I started making these project recaps, the whole idea was, let me make something that I can send to a client where they can see what a design process looks like, because I started charging consults and design consults. So I was like, let me show them. So while I'm on the phone doing this phone consult with them, I can say like, want me to follow, like they're unconvinced to pay me a $500 design consult. So let me send you a couple jobs that we've done so you can get an idea of what our entire process looks like. And then I would follow up with them in a week and they'd be like, yeah, let's do it. I'm ready to pay for that $500 design consult. And so that's kind of where the blogs were to answer questions, and then the project recaps were to convince clients that it was worth the spend. And validation cycle, it keeps validating itself over and over and over again that this is worth the time and worth the amount of effort we're putting into it.
Where did that design consult fee come from? Was it an increase in demand that you just couldn't keep up with, so to just weed out people, or was this a way to just qualify clients just to see if they were worth your time going out and meeting with them?
The contractor fight, their big push was you need to have a sales process, and they have a 5-step sales process. And the first part of this sales process starts with what they call the Shin Fu. The guy's name is Shinholzer, and they call it like kind of like Kung Fu, but with words. And so they shorten Shinholzer's name to Shin, and then it's Fu, right? So the Shin Fu process is what the contractor has coined. And it's all about just having a real conversation with the client to understand what they want, to understand what their budget is, what their timeline is, and what's motivating the project at the end of the day. And so I'm having these 30-minute long phone calls with people. And so I was able to arm them with our website before them or after them, and able to kind of weed out what they're looking for. And when you're talking to some people, let's just say there's personality differences. Sometimes you're talking to someone and you're like, hey, this is not a good fit because the personality is too different. Other times there's budget differences. Hey, like I need like Easton Outdoors needs 50 grand to install that project, and people will say I have a $30,000 budget. So you'll ask them like, is this something you'd like to do in phases? or is this something you need to have done at $30,000? And a lot of times people just say it's the $30,000. And so right then, it's not a good fit. And then other times it's timeline, right? Like their timeline is too short. They have got the right budget. You both are talking the same language. It's a good personality fit, but the timeline, like they need it done in 5 weeks and your schedule's out 8 weeks. So right then that's not going to be a good fit. So the whole sales process starts with a phone call. From the phone call, it moves to an on-site consult, which we charge most of the time for. It's just as a way of weeding out people who wouldn't be willing to pay for our services in the first place. And then from that consult, that goes into the overall cost of the job. And then what we typically do is I can usually give you a budget while I'm standing on site, plus or minus 10%, pick up a deposit check, lock you into our schedule. So the phone consult weeds everybody down to the right number of people. The on-site weeds them down to the actual budget. We give them a range on the phone, weeds them down to the actual budget. I usually pick up a consult or a deposit check in that site visit. And then over the next couple of days, I clean up the design. I get them a contract. If they sign it all, then I put the deposit check in the bank. And then from there, it moves over to my production team, and the production team handles it all the way to the end.
Let me know if I'm getting this right. So the content all serves a purpose to get the client familiar with you, to set you guys up as an authority that know their work, to be able to or know what you actually do. Like, that this is a good company that does quality work, that then leads them to being very willing to pay $500 for that design consult in a way. Is that kind of the whole methodology behind the content, basically?
Yeah, that's the whole idea behind that content. Yeah, and that's what Marcus Sheridan had established in his book, They Ask You Answer, is that you need to brand yourself as the expert. There's another guy who's driven that point home in a little bit of a different way, but I respect it a lot. This guy's name is Daniel Pink. He's kind of coined himself as the master negotiator. And Daniel Pink's philosophy is that until about 8 years ago, buying and selling happened the same way since the beginning of time. Is that if I owned a horse and you wanted to buy it, I knew everything about the horse. I knew how hard I had worked it. I knew how many times I had whipped it. I knew everything that I had done with that horse, and you had no clue what I'd done with that horse. And so you had to believe me for what I was telling you about that horse. And so in that scenario, the seller controls the entire process. They have the information and the buyer does not. Same thing goes with a car. I know exactly how hard I have driven that car. I know everything about that car. I know everything that where it's been, whether it's been driving on the beach in the Outer Banks, or whether it's been, up north living its entire life. And so the seller of something was able to control all the information. Daniel Pink says, now you can go on Carfax and you can find out almost everything you want about that car. Or you can go on YouTube and you can watch all the videos about the 2025 Suburban, and you can look at all these things that are out online about the 2025 Suburban. You can read every single little thing, and you can go to the dealership armed with more information than the salesman of that Suburban probably has. And I'm picking a Suburban, it's an easy example, but you can go almost anywhere. You've got Glassdoor that'll tell you about an employment place. You've got Facebook where you can stalk people's profiles. You've got ChatGPT where you can look up and understand almost anything. And so you've got all these resources at your behest where you can actually know more about something if you really wanted to than the person that is trying to sell you something knows about it. And so for the first time in history, they had what was called information disparity. And now we're living in what's called information parity, where it is equalized the playing field. And one of the best ways to be on the equal playing field is to be the source of the information. If you're watching my YouTube video about the Suburban and I'm telling you all the hacks about it, and then I said, well, why don't you come down to my store and you can buy one from me? You're automatically you're going to trust me more. And so anytime that we can be the source, anytime that we can be the perpetrator of that information and be a valid source, I'm not just saying about spewing whatever. I'm talking about being a legitimate, well-educated, well put together source. People are going to trust you, and then that gives you the upper hand in making sure that you are also part of this information parity.
And as you're talking, I'm also going through your website because I know I saw it in the past, but you're very transparent on pricing on the website. Just going through, let's say, a patio. I'm not going to say the dollar points here, but you do have square foot pricing for a small patio, which is higher square foot pricing. Whereas if they go with a large patio, you can see that dollar per square foot goes down there. Has being transparent about pricing helped? And does it get difficult when, say, a client looks at that square foot pricing and says that's perfect, but then you go out there and they want some sort of like curve design, lots of cuts, they want a specific paver that they maybe didn't see that you had Techo Block Eva put out there on that, or a specific product, and they want to change that up to say like something like porcelain, which is much more expensive. How difficult does that kind of get in that conversation process, or has just being transparent about your pricing just helped overall?
It is something to navigate because sometimes people will not read and will not quite understand what we're getting at, which is perfectly fine. Like I don't have any problem with that. But as long as we're firm and willing to lead people back to that same table, that pricing table that we have, or say, hey, yes, we can do that, what you're asking for, but it does lead to this square footage pricing, or like we're the guide, we're here to navigate you. And so if you're telling me you want something and you're kind of going astray, absolutely, I have no problem doing that. I do want you to know that that's a higher price point, but we're happy to do that. As far as like curves and cuts and things like that, we have no problem doing that kind of stuff. I just tell people, hey, you're losing some square footage. The price point in there is to get as far as we can with one pallet. And if you want me to cut some fancy curves, there's going to be a lot of waste. And so I'll tell people, no problem. But instead of getting, I can get, a 10 by 13 out of a pallet of Eva. If you say, hey, I want to have some curves and stuff like that, I'm like, you might only be able to get like a 10 by 11 out of this this pallet. But it's going to have all the curves and everything you want. And people are completely understanding of that and just fall right in line with it.
Hey, are you planning to attend HNA Hardscape North America, October 22nd to the 24th in Louisville, Kentucky? Well, you can use our promo code VIPHTH to get 50% off your tickets, or you can click the link in the show notes below to register for this. I've gone the past 2 years. It is awesome. A massive trade show along with the Equip Exposition with more than 1,000 exhibits, 42,000 square feet hardscape house, as well as a 30 plus acre outdoor demo yard that you can demo equipment. There's the HNA Awards ceremony. There's lots of educational sessions throughout the day, and there's more than enough events before and after the trade show itself. I've always enjoyed my time. I'll see you there. Use the code VIP HTH to get 50% off your tickets, and register sooner rather than later because tickets do increase leading up to the show. We want to take a break from today's episode to thank our sponsor, Knowledge Tree Consulting. They are efficiency consultants in the industry with 35 plus years of industry experience building Oriole landscaping in Toronto, which they are completely hands off at this point. George and Peter have been on the podcast before, and George on multiple occasions now. I've personally leaned on him to help with the How to Hardscape headquarters software and how we can maximize the efficiency of user experience. And I know the guys at DTE Landscaping, Chuck and Jeffrey, who we've also had on the show multiple times, have hired them on in the past. Check out their consulting services, peer groups, and events that are coming up on their website, knowledgetreeconsulting.com, or check them out on Instagram at joinktc. Now back to our episode. Where do you suggest somebody that wants to get started with creating the content and going down the route that you did? Is it going back to doing like a Facebook Live on their business page, or is it starting to write articles on the website, or is it something that they're most comfortable with? Like, where do you kind of point people if they ask you, I want to go down the same content route to do what you're talking about? Where do I even begin?
That's a good question because it can be a little bit overwhelming of where to start.
Yeah.
I believe that if we want to go down this route, we all have to be good on camera. We have to be well enough spoken. We have to know where to put our hands. We have to know what words to cut out. And it takes about 50 videos to get to a point where you at least you have an understanding of what you look like on camera, and you have an understanding about how to hold yourself on camera. And you have to watch those videos, which is so painful, right? And unless you're a complete narcissist, nobody likes watching their videos. Nobody likes seeing what they look like and seeing the words that they stumble across. I hate it. And you probably always will hate it. Like, unless you're a complete narcissist, right? I mean, it's just is not a comfortable process to go through. Going through those 50 videos, though, really gets you familiar with building at least somebody who's not painful to watch. Because if we're painful to watch on a video, it's really hard for clients to buy into who we are unless they're really just motivated to buy from you. That's the first place to start. And that I think Facebook Lives are the best because it forces you to do something unedited, uncut. You can't curate it. You can't change what you've said. What you've said is out there in the universe. I mean, I've turned off Facebook Lives and deleted them and started again. I've done that. But one of the best things to do to get good at a video is if you were doing a pitch to a client and you're standing there and you're saying, here's the proposal, here's the design, here's everything. If you messed up in the middle of that pitch, you're not going to like, hey, pause. I got to start this pitch all the way from the beginning. Let me tell you about why you should buy from me. No, you're going to say, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. Here's what I wanted to say instead. And you're just going to roll forward. And I think Facebook Live gives you that grace and that ability to learn how to do videos and Instagram Live, TikTok Live. Actually, TikTok Live is a fantastic place to start right now because they're giving it a lot of the algorithm is favoring TikTok Live, and that's a whole nother story. But we've had a lot of success on TikTok Live lately. But starting with lives, I think is a good place to start in just getting those first 50 videos. And what we did is we would then I would do a before, a during, and an after of the same project. And then I would download those videos and I put them into a long form YouTube video. And then I have a complete project that I can then send to a client. They're asking for a pool and they're asking for walls around the pool. And they're asking for a fire pit area, maybe an outdoor kitchen or whatever it is. And I now have a video that shows everything in one place on YouTube and I can just send somebody that link. And that was a huge recipe for success for us, is I could put a whole project together without really any effort. I'm not setting up cameras. I'm not doing a bunch of work that is hard to keep track of. It's almost like the bare minimum. And what I see most people do is they try to start by getting a bunch of fancy equipment, these microphones and these gimbals, and it's just a barrier to entry. It's going to keep us from actually getting started. Once that video is put together and you have, let's just say your before, your during, and your after all in one YouTube video, write a blog about that video. Just take it and you can throw this into well, chat wouldn't do it, but you can throw it into almost any AI and say, watch this video and give me a summary of the video. And then you can go mess with the key points inside of that video. And now you have mostly of the structure of your blog. And then you can take that structure of a blog to ChatGPT and say, write this like you're an expert content writer and you understand SEO. Here's the products we're going to be using and give me an outline for this. And it'll give you an outline. And you say, okay, I approve the outline. Now write it as if I'm a 12th grader or a 12-year-old and I need to understand the depth and this and that. And it'll spit out another blog. And then you say, okay, now write it in a personalized fashion for somebody who wants to have a patio in their backyard and is tired of looking at their backyard and it's disgusting to them and they just want to be able to get out there and enjoy family time. And it'll write you. So you ask for the content or the table of contents, you ask them to write it in a way that makes sense. And then you ask them to write it in a way that's compelling. And typically by the time that third prompt comes around, that's almost copy and pastable to your website and with a couple edits and just clean it up a little bit. And so what starts as just doing these 50 videos just to get yourself on camera, you can quickly move over to YouTube just to get a piece of content that you can send to clients. And then you can write a blog to go with that. And again, we're probably all in at this point per video and making one blog, you're probably in it for 4 hours, right? This isn't some long drawn out, super extensive, and who cares if it's messy and choppy. Get your first one up there, get your validation cycle going so that you can see that there is a point in effort and you'll put more time into it once it's proven itself.
I was just about to ask you, what do you say to a contractor that says, I don't have the time to do that, but I think you just kind of made it quite clear that you can create a one piece of content that then stretches out to from a live video to an article to a YouTube video to then you can break that down into shorts. You can create so many different pieces of content just from going live once.
we see so many people doing good content. Our feeds are inundated with people that are doing really, really good content. Content has evolved quite a bit in just, let's just say, the last 5 years. In the last 3 years, content has evolved, and the abilities to make really clean and perfect content, the editing software and the AI tools that are available have progressed really far. Don't look at that. Stop looking around at that. Look at what your clients need to see locally to be convinced to buy from you and start there. It's good for it to be entertaining and it's good for it to be something that you would want to watch yourself. But we don't need to start at that point. Because if we look at that, we're going to be so depressed that we'll never start. So we need to start somewhere that's tangible and it's going to be terrible. And that's okay. Everybody who's making really good content started in the terribleness as well. Honestly, if you look at most of the personalities on Instagram, most of the people making really good content, a ton of them actually have come from being news anchors or come from some sort of acting or like they were professionally trained to do what they're doing. Very few of like the really famous popular ones just lucked into being influencers. Most of them started in the industry and then moved over to being if you dig deep enough, a lot of them started in something else and then moved over to being a personality.
That's really interesting. And I do want to ask you also on your website, you have on your team page, you have a videographer editor. Do you still have that position there? And well, first I'll ask you that.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's quite an overhead expense to bring on into the business. When did you decide you needed that role? And how important is that role to be able to, bear that salary in that business?
Like we know that it works, right? Because I've got a
Right.
bunch of validation cycles going over and over and over again. We've proven that having content pays for itself. We'll just say so. We don't have paid search. We don't do a lot. Like I have one little thing we pay on Facebook. Almost all of our marketing expense is in the labor to create the content. We're not paying another agency to do anything. So I want to start with that because it's important to understand, like for 6 million in sales, this year will be like 6.5 in sales with about, 5.8 or 6 in revenue. And it's important to understand that our spend on marketing is less than 2%, where most companies who have an aggressive growth path or who are trying to grow are spending somewhere between 5 and maybe 10, but probably between 5 and 8% of their gross revenue on marketing. So it's important to understand, like, okay, what's the real expense? Paying Angie for leads or paying somebody to run your Google ads, or bringing something in house and building your own content. So that's a totally side question, but I think it's important to establish that there's an expense no matter what you're doing. And even word of mouth has an expense to cultivate and curate those relationships to make sure that you're bringing in enough leads to prop up the business. So um, buy back your time is I don't know if you guys if you haven't read that book, go buy that book. That's a really valuable book. It breaks your time into this matrix of 4 categories, and the first category is probably the thing that you're best at. So just imagine a matrix, a 4 square, and in the top category, maybe your time's worth $1,000 an hour. And I don't know what it is. Maybe you're the best bricklayer there ever was. Maybe you're the best salesman there ever was. Maybe you're the best marketer there ever was. Maybe you're the best with the teams and managing the schedule and doing all the office work. I don't know. But there's probably something that's your superpower. You're absolutely good at it and you get paid, let's just say $1,000 an hour. The thing that's next closest to that is probably only $100 an hour that you're getting paid realistically. And let's just say it's something that it brings you a little bit of joy, but it's just something that you have to do. It could be just running payroll. And maybe it's like, I have to run payroll. It's only worth $100 an hour, but it's something that you have to do inside of the organization. There's there's nobody to hand that off. The third category would be, let's just say a $50 an hour. It might be something that still brings you joy. It's something that you like to do, but it's something that it's something that you probably could have delegated by now, but you still like to do it. And so it's worth you only getting paid $50 an hour to do that task. So, and again, I'm being very general and broad in all of this. And then the last category would be something that's maybe only worth $25 an hour. Right. So we've kind of brought down our different tiers. We have 1,000, 100, 50, and 25. This $25 an hour thing, maybe it is running payroll. Maybe it's responding to phone calls. Maybe it's going and picking up materials from a yard. Maybe it's recording a video. Maybe it's um, talking to a supplier and telling them what the materials that you need ordered are. But there's probably something, and if we did a time audit, we would all find something that's going to be in that lowest category. And a lot of times we're just not willing to take that off of our plate and hand it to somebody else. Well, what I found is that I was spending a reasonable amount of time editing videos, uploading them to a Google Drive, sending them off to an editor and overseas and having them edit and send it back to me. I was spending a reasonable amount of time driving around getting final photos of jobs. And I was spending a reasonable amount of time. What I looked at is I'm like, okay, if my time is worth, let's just say on average, $100 an hour, and I'm doing a $25 an hour task of running around getting all these photos and doing all this stuff, I think it's time for, if I can save 15 hours a week, then it's going to pay for that position. And so that's literally what I did. I did a time audit. I saw exactly how much time I was spending. I took my salary, I divided it by 2,100 hours, and I saw exactly how much money I was spending on doing these tasks. And I said, okay, it makes sense that I hire somebody at this point. And so we hired and we fulfilled that role. And it totally has paid for itself because we see over and over again that our content brings the clients in. And now I have a copywriter as well. And so the copywriter and the videographer, I mean, they work hand in hand to create all the content and put all the stuff online. And there's just a steady stream of stuff happening that I'm not part of. And that marketing is happening the way that we know it needs to happen to bring the leads in continually.
And that goes back to that validation process, which you mentioned there. Validate that it works and then double down on it. So, a couple more questions before I have to let you go here. What is your day-to-day like today in the business? What are you doing on a daily basis for Easton Outdoors?
Yes. So I'm a big time block guy. So I break all my time into blocks of time. And so on Mondays are actually my office day. I don't typically leave the office. So we have our production meeting at the beginning of the day, or I'd say it's our team meeting at the beginning of the day. And we actually start our week with a devotion. And we go through prayer requests and praise reports, and then we move over to a devotion, and then we move over to production, like talking about where the different teams need to be throughout the week. And then from there, we move over to everybody sharing numbers. So everybody around that table has some number that they need to share or a KPI that they need to share with the team. And so we all share it because it's important to recognize the numbers that matter for the entire team that make the business function and flow. And so it's an important part of our meeting. So that's our Monday meeting, morning meeting. Then I have a marketing meeting at 8:30. And then I always at noon every Monday, I have some responsibility inside of the contractor fight. Those guys helped me get my business straight. And so now I give back to the contractor fight and I'm a coach over there. And so I run a call every Monday. Sometimes it's a long call. I run a program called War Room, which is guys that are growing their business from 1 million to 5 million. And so I coach them and help them get their systems and processes in place because we've been at 5 million for about 4 years now. So I help those guys kind of establish what that looks like and how to build the expectations and build the team and everything like that. And then I run a Go Gate, and then we have a production meeting at 3 o'clock. And that 3 o'clock is where we essentially take the clients that we've sold, we bring that packet into the production cycle, we hand it off to the production team, they schedule it, they do all that stuff. And so it's a weekly handoff. And so that's my Mondays. And then I do a lot of phone consults. So I have phone consults in the morning on Tuesdays, and in the afternoon on Wednesdays, and then again on Friday mornings. And then the rest of the week is design time. Like I have design time blocked out, and then in-person consults, I have that blocked out. So really Monday is kind of like my, a lot of like working on the business type stuff. And then Tuesday through Friday is the sales and handling a lot of the phone consults and working with the team on different stuff. And I have the team meetings and stuff that I schedule throughout the evenings as well.
Amazing. Well, I have so many more questions for you. So maybe if you'd be interested, we could do a round two in the future because even those questions that I typically get into, we didn't touch on any of them.
Yeah.
But so there's plenty of things. Plus, I got many more questions. Really quick, the contractor fight. We've had Tom on the show a couple of times. Really great episodes. Really great group from what I hear as well. The contractor fight. What's the biggest takeaway that you've had from being in there? Just like a really quick one, if you could share something.
Yeah, so the everything in the contractor fight is broken up into three real categories. You have sales, you have marketing, and you have numbers. And they're all very symbiotic, right? So if you're selling things at the wrong price point, then your numbers are going to be jacked up. But you also need to make sure you have the leads in order to sell it. So there's this cycle, and you can't put one above the other or one below the other because you need the market to get the sales, and you need the sales to get to the numbers. And you need to understand the numbers to make sure you're selling at the right rate, to make sure that you're marketing in the right way. So really, if you're to sum up everything that happens at the contractor fight, is we're going to teach you how to talk, because that's the most important thing. Is you need to know how to have a conversation with a potential client, with the prospect. And you need to know how not to be manipulative, but you need to know how to lead that conversation into understanding whether they're a good fit or not. And that's the crux of everything that's taught at the contractor fight. And we have daily at noon coaching every single day during the week to teach people how to be a good orator, to teach people how to actually talk to clients and how to take them through a sales process. Oh, and by the way, we teach you how to market, and we teach you how to do all the things I just talked about. Oh, and by the way, we teach you how to find your daily break even. And we teach you how to understand how to ballpark and bracket quickly while you're on the phone, how to build out menu pricing, how to build out daily rate pricing, how to understand the materials and how they interact with your overhead, how your overhead interacts with your overall costing, so that you can actually find your daily break even. Right. So I can't just teach you one thing and then send you off. We have to make sure that you have a good understanding of all the basics. And so there's contractor business school, which is guys who are just starting out up to 500,000. And this is all through contractor fight. There's contractor business school, which is a good low price, under $1,000 a year. And then you move over to the battleground, which is guys who are going, essentially from 500 to a million, maybe 1.5. And that's, around $8,000 a year. And then there's War Room, which is guys going from 1 all the way to 5. And that's like, it depends on exactly all the packages you buy, but that's about 18,000. And that includes everything below it. So each one of those is kind of cumulative. So you get, War Room, you get CBS and Battleground. Battleground, you get CBS, and then CBS is just by itself.
Well, Micah, thank you so much for your time today and sharing everything that you did. I do really appreciate it. Where can our audience go find out more about you, Easton Outdoors? Where do you want to send them to?
Yeah, so you can go to our Instagram page, is probably a good place to start, and our Facebook page as well. So any of our handles are at Easton Outdoors LLC, not Eastern, but Easton, Easton, Easton Outdoors. And then you can also, if you just type my name into the podcast world, you'll find a bunch of stuff that I've done with Tom. You'll find a bunch of podcasts where I kind of dive a little bit deeper into marketing and a little bit more of the background and the reasons behind why we do what we do. And I got a bunch of pie charts out there of how to look at marketing and stuff like that, because I really do like marketing. It's something that I'm pretty passionate about.
Beautiful. And I love talking marketing. So thank you so much for indulging in this conversation with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Go give Easton Outdoors a follow on Instagram at Easton Outdoors LLC. And from there, you can take a look at their website and all the different stuff that they've got going on. Let them know that you heard them on the How to Hardscape podcast. And while you're at it, a 5-star rating, review, Apple, Spotify would really help us. So if you found some value here, if you could leave us that 5-star rating, review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this, or share this with somebody who you think would find it helpful. And before we leave you, I want to say thank you to our sponsors. Cycle CPA. If you're looking for bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA at cyclecpa.com. Let them know How to Hardscape sent you for money off their services there. PatioSEO.com. And now you know Patio SEO can take your hardscape business to the next level. James Reed and his expert team have built a reputation on success, not just for their own companies, but for hundreds of others just like yours. So don't wait. Visit PatioSEO.com to learn more and get started. But also be sure to follow James's journey on Instagram at Road to 100 M's. That's Road to 100 MS for behind the scenes tips and insights. And I do recommend checking that out and following along to that. Ready to build your brand? Patio SEO is here to help you every step of the way. If you're planning to go to Hardscape North America in Louisville, Kentucky, October 22nd to the 24th, you can use promo code VIPHTH to sign up, get 50% off your registration. That also gives us a little bit of a kickback and helps us here at the How to Hardscape podcast. And Knowledge Tree Consulting. George and Peter there are efficiency consultants in our industry, and I've had the privilege of having them both on one episode of the How to Hardscape podcast, and George multiple other times. Always great episodes, and I also got to sit down on a one-on-one with George and went through what they do for businesses, and I left that meeting with a lot of value, so I can't recommend them enough. If you want to learn more about what they do, go to knowledgetreeconsulting.com and get that conversation started with them today. And we look forward to meeting you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.